The area that we now know as Oregon was not always developed like it is today. The first exploration of the beautiful land began when Spanish explorers first saw the Oregon coast in 1542. The wild land attracted other countries too. The struggle to claim the land created an intense rivalry between the British and the Spanish that ended with neither being able to successfully claim the area. Meanwhile, in 1787, Robert Gray became the first American to land on the Oregon coast. Later, in 1792, he gave the Columbia River its name. The first time Oregon was truly explored, however, was not until after Thomas Jefferson bought the Louisiana Purchase and sent Meriwether Lewis and William Clark to explore the unknown land. When Lewis and Clark returned east with furs, John Jacob Astor was given the idea to set up a permanent fur trading post called Fort Astoria at the mouth of the Columbia River. In 1812, Robert Stewart discovered the South Pass through the Rocky Mountains, making it possible for wagon trains to cross to Oregon. Later, in 1824, Dr. John McLaughlin took charge of Fort Vancouver and was in charge of it for 22 years. Today, John McLaughlin is called the Father of Oregon because he did so much to help settlers get started in the new territory.
The Oregon Trail began as an unmarked route for fur traders to the Pacific Northwest. No one ever imagined that it would lead generations of settlers to the Northwest, let alone start a whole new future for America. The passageway emerged from a route for fur traders to a route to missionaries, gold miners, and immigrants seeking a new future. The major driving force was the promise of free land. However, the trail was not all good. It killed many from untreated cuts that got infected, disease, being run over by animals, being attacked by Indians, dehydration and starvation, and of course, bad weather.
It's official that we're going on the Oregon Trail in 3 weeks. No, I refuse to leave. But we'll have a new future with the free land that will guarantee go. It'll all be okay. What do we tell the kids? What if they die? We'll tell them tonight. It'll be alright. Kids, come on in the kitchen. We're leaving to go to the west. 3 weeks. Yay, an adventure! What's gonna happen to the house? The animals! We'll have to leave the farm, the house, and most of the animals behind. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Go to bed, kids. We have to get up early to start prepping. Fine!
The land that every traveler passed through was hard, hot, and rugged. The very first travelers had to mark the path themselves. Others followed the deep wagon prints that are still there today. The lands were covered in Indian tribes, but there are few attacks on the way. Also, they saw many animals such as prairie dogs, elk, and deer, but mostly buffalo, which they killed to stock up on food. Waiting hours for a herd to pass. Each family was responsible for loading their own wagon with supplies such as clothes, tools, guns, horseshoes, and a couple of family heirlooms, and of course about 1,000 pounds of food for a family of 4. Some carried plows, shovels, axes, and water barrels, which were all carried on the side of their wagons. Many people used wagons called prairie schooners. These wagons were 4 feet wide and 12 feet long. Travelers chose these because they were small, meaning less to have to pull, and they were light enough to float on water. The wagons were covered in waterproof canvas to prevent damage. Horses were too expensive for settlers to use, so they used mules and oxen to pull the wagons. The journey lasted about 5 months only, traveling about 15 miles per day. It was imperative for them to cross the mountains before winter because if they didn't, there was no hope left for them. The immigrants spent the winter months stocking up on food, clothes, and other necessities. In late March or early April, they would load their wagon on a steamboat on the Missouri River, but the easy ride did not last long. Once the river couldn't be traveled anymore, the family would unload their wagon and wait for the grass to grow, literally. If they left too soon, the grass would be too short and the oxen would starve. By late April, they set off on their perilous journey. The first week or so was probably one of the hardest. People who had never driven animals before tipped over wagons, ran into trees, and started traffic jams. Even then, the dangers of the trail were not gone. The biggest killer was cholera. The disease thrived in unsanitary conditions. Trains camped in garbage that other trains had left, unknowingly catching the disease. A person could be healthy one morning, in agony by afternoon, and dead by that evening. First, they would get a violent stomachache. Next, they would vomit, causing themselves to become dehydrated. Their skin would turn blue, and they usually died within the first 24 hours. If they could survive that long, they usually recovered. However, once past Fort Laramie, they were pretty safe in the high elevations. The long trail started at Independence, Missouri. In each wagon train, there was a wagon master in charge. He had the privilege of making all the rules and was in charge of all the discipline. Some of the major stops they made on the journey were located at Fort Kearney, Fort Laramie, Fort Bridger, Fort Hall, Fort Boise, Whitman's Mission, Fort Vancouver, Portland, and Fort Astoria.
The tiring pace of the journey even drove some crazy. One lady named Elizabeth Markham went insane alongside the Snake River. She announced to her family that she would not continue on. The father was forced to push on without her. He sent his son back to retrieve her later on. She returned on her own and informed her family that she had clubbed their son to death with a rock. The father raced back to find his son still clinging to life. When he returned, he found his wife had burnt up one of the family wagons during his absence, and his son died soon after.
The Oregon Territory was an area which was highly desired by both Great Britain and the United States. Both countries had claimed it earlier, but between 1848 and 1859, it was an organized U.S. territory. On August 14, 1848, an act of Congress organized the Territory of Oregon out of the part of their claim of the Oregon country below the 49th parallel north. The original modern-day states included were Idaho, Oregon, Washington, and the western parts of Montana and Wyoming. The United States also set up the first capital for the territory in Oregon City. Eventually, in 1851, it was moved to Salem. In 1853, Washington Territory was formed out of a part of the Oregon country. Washington Territory consisted of the area north of the Lower Columbia and north of the 46th parallel east of the Columbia. While the government was worrying about demarcating boundaries and setting up capitals, the commoners worried about the Whitman Mission massacre and the taunting promise of gold in Oregon.
Oh, hello, I didn't see you there. This is the Penelope Miller Show with Kenobi, Gretchen, and Jack. We're here to tell you about the Whitman massacre. It occurred for several reasons. First, there was the Native Americans blaming Dr. Whitman, who they believed could cure anything, from bruises to cuts to broken bones, because they thought that he was able to cure any European illnesses such as cholera. When he didn't, and they all turned blue and died, everyone was horribly mad. Also, there was a conflict between missionaries and local priests who both practiced different religions, so they believed that each of them was wrong, so of course that's going to lead to a fight. Also, Narcissa Whitman, she sort of didn't like the Indians. She thought their way of life was just stupid compared to the white man's. So all of this led the very mad Indians, the Tomahas, the Yakalakis, the Clackamas, and the two Cayuses, Tolucaic and Keomsumkin, to attack the Whitman Mission on November 29, 1847. Thank you.
Also, 54 women and children were captured and all were held for ransom. By the time their ransom of 62 blankets, 63 cotton shirts, 12 Hudson Bay rifles, 600 loads of ammunition, 7 pounds of tobacco, and 12 flints was paid, only 49 prisoners were living.